Good afternoon everyone and welcome to Datatools live stream of Hotspots. Today we're going to run through hotspots in general regarding how to make hotspots, their packages, their radio services and the setup on the Microtech. I am joined by Gabriel today who will be handling the Microtech setup. Please understand majority of this has been pre-configured to save time, but we will go through every step so that you can see how it is done. Gabriel?
Good day everybody. I'll be quickly going through the Microtech side of setting up all the hotspots, just to show you guys step by step on how to do it behind the PPP connection. So firstly what we'll do is we'll take a look at the hotspot, the Microtech's firmware. As you can see, I've already updated the Microtech firmware. This is important, just to always ensure security reasons and any other bugs on previous Microtech firmware. So on the first steps we'll do is we'll quickly set up a PPP account, which you'll see we'll navigate to PPP on your left hand side, hit the plus button on this side, go to PPPoE client. As you'll see, this is the setup, this is the page that will be popped up. I'll just quickly go to my pre-configuration. You'll see that you'll set up the PPPoE on the interface uplink. As you can see that I've named all my interfaces. Setting up PPPoE, we usually use the name on default. Choose interface uplink, the username and the password. This can vary from setup to setup. All other configurations we'll leave on default. Second, we'll go to bridge quickly. We'll set up a bridge for the internal. As you can see, bridge internal. After the bridge we set up, we will quickly add all ports except for the uplink port. As you can see, I've configured ether 1 to ether 4 into my bridge. Leave out ether 5 for uplink, otherwise it can cause some issues. When we're done with that, we'll quickly put up a IP address for the bridge that we've just configured. We'll navigate to IP on the left hand side, addresses. As you can see here, there's already 2 IP addresses configured. We'll be looking at the bottom one first. As you can see, it's an internal range configured on 192.168.50.1. This will also vary depending on your network. You can see that the interface I've chosen is in fact the bridge internal. When I'm done with that, we'll quickly go to IP DHCP server, and then we'll set up a DHCP server for the IP address just configured. I'll quickly just run through the wizard for you. We usually use the wizard. As you can see, we take bridge internal for the 192.168.50.1 IP address. Say next on the wizard. Ensure you can just leave this default. Take a look at the DHCP network, keep it default. DHCP relay, don't put in anything over there. And as you can see, the DHCP server has already been set up. Just quickly running to the pool side. There we go. So the pool we've configured on our internal bridge will be 192.168.50.20 to 192.168.50.254. We usually leave a few IP addresses open that we can use for static IP addresses. When we're done with that, we'll navigate to IP firewall to NAT. We'll then configure a source NAT masquerade for the specified internal IP address at source NAT. and then on the action tab you'll just use masquerade as an action, press apply and OK. After we've done that, we can then start configuring the VLAN for the hotspot itself. So that will navigate to interfaces, navigate to the VLAN tab. I'm going to open my VLAN. As you can see, I've configured my VLAN as VLAN 15-hotspot. The interface I've chosen is the bridge internal, as the hotspot will run on top of the internal bridge that we have configured. You can press apply, OK. Now configuring an IP address on the VLAN itself. As you can see at the address list, I've configured a 10.6.60.1/24 IP address range for the VLAN. With DNS setup, you can go to IP DNSs. Here preferably you'll use your network's DNS address. 254. There we go. Ensure that you do not tick allow remote request. You can just apply the DNS like that. We will then also set up static DNSs. As shown here. Please note that the IP address 1.1.1 for the Unify itself is not a valid IP address, and that you will insert your Unify IP address or your UAP IP address server over there. The second DNS that you see over here is dt.hotspot. This is basically the DNS configured for the hotspot itself. Okay. After setting up all DNS, we will navigate to radius at the left hand side again and configure the radius. Firstly, ensure that your port is configured correctly as 1700 and the radius incoming port is chosen as accept. Secondly, you'll see that there's three options that you'll need to choose for this setup. It's PPP, hotspot and login on the radius server general tab, and that your radius IP address should be configured in here with your password as radius. On the timeout, we usually put a 3000 millisecond timeout for the radius itself, and at source address you will configure your router board's IP address, which in this case will be 255.6.254. 254. There we go. Apply. Okay. Please just ensure that all ports over here is correct as well. Now for setting up the hotspot, we'll start to navigate to, let me just close a few of the tabs. Setting up hotspot, we'll navigate to IP, hotspot, servers. As you can see, I've already pre-configured the hotspot, but I will take you through the hotspot setup quickly on the wizard. So when doing the hotspot, when starting the hotspot wizard, the interface you'll be choosing will be the VLAN 15 hotspot as configured previously. We'll hit the next button. Local address of the network will be the 10.6.60.1/24 or the IP address that you've configured on the VLAN for the hotspot. Next, as you can see, this is now the hotspot pool, which is being configured. I'm leaving the hotspot as is, as Usually hotspots take quite a few users and won't need any static IP addresses. No certificates are required, and we'll leave this as default. IP of the SMTP server we leave as default. DNS server is basically the same DNS that has been configured at IP DNS over here, as you can see. DNS name, this is now basically any DNS name that you make up for the hotspot. So I'll just use dt.hotspot like that. This can be any name which you as a person decide on. As you can see that the hotspot will want to create a local user, which will be deleted afterwards as it's a bit unsecure, or you can keep it. Just ensure that you type in a password, as this will give free access to the internet. And yeah, that's basically setting up the hotspot. Now, as I said, usually we all take a look at the admin user. First delete the admin user, then we'll quickly limit the hotspot, the entire hotspot, to an X amount of throughput, as well as limiting each user as with an X amount of bandwidth that they are allowed with. So going to server profile, we're not going to worry about this one here. As you can see, my pre-configured one, the name is training over here. As you can see, the rate limit here is set to 15 meg download and upload. This is to limit the hotspot entirely to 15 megabytes. Going to the login tab of hotspot server, you'll see the following that needs to be ticked is MAC, HTTP CHAP, HTTP PAP, MAC cookies. Ensure that HTTPS is not ticked, and then tick trial as well. This you'll need for free trial users that you will hear more from on the Datatal side of the hotspot configuration. You can keep the Mac auth mode default, all other settings default except for trial uptime limit will be default on 30 minutes. We set it to 1 day for a 24-hour trial period. On radius side, you'll need to tick radius. It will be unticked by default, so please enable radius and ensure that the interim update time is on 1 minute. Okay, that was for setting up the limits on the hotspot itself. When taking a look on setting the bandwidth for each individual person that's connecting to the hotspot, you'll navigate to user profiles in your hotspot tab. On the general, you can keep everything the same and just include or just configure the amount of bandwidth you'd like the client to have. And on our case, it will be a 5 meg upload and download as shown. Okay. After all that's done, we'll quickly configure the SNMP and the API user, which makes it possible for the MikroTik router and the hotspot to communicate with the Datatal server. So we'll navigate to IP, SNMP, as seen. I've configured the contact info, Datatal, there we go. Location, where the location of the MikroTik is, apply OK. After we've done that, we'll quickly set up, go to system, users. As seen here, we've configured an API user 2. This is the user that's been used to communicate with Datatal and to allow Datatal to push through any settings to the MikroTik. As you can see that the group rights needs to be full, so that it can be able to actually configure the settings to the MikroTik. Putting this on read will prevent Datatel from pushing through any configurations. So apply OK over there. This username is basically the management username and password that you'll use to log into your MikroTiks by default. We can also set up an SNTP server system. Some of the routers will show it as NTP, as shown on this one. No, that's wrong, sorry. NTP client, yeah, sorry, we're looking at the NTP client. Need to enable it, and then there you can type in the NTP server IP address. Press apply and OK, and then that basically concludes the MikroTik side setup of the hotspot. So I'll quickly give through to Timmy again so that he can go through the Datatel radius setup with you quickly. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Timothy here again. Thank you Gabriel for helping us through the MikroTik setup. I'll be handling the Datatel side of things now. So as I said before, a lot of the things are pre-configured. So I'm going to go through majority of the settings and the details so that we can see how it should be done. Okay, let's start. Firstly, we have now configured the device, but that still means the device has to be added into Datatel itself. For example, you can see the device is here with the information added. You will put in the IP of the device description. Location we have just set as test, but you can set that as anything. There's no parent gateway at the moment as this is testing purposes, but this can be changed around regarding how your network is set up. Device type would be the router, the device and MikroTik. Also then you would add your device model so that you can keep track of what's going on. This would also be your login and your login username and password for that device specifically. There's your SNMP community settings as Gabriel showed on the MikroTik, the same there, and you have options here regarding different things as in run speed tests, including monitoring, probe devices, probe device interfaces, and then also the firmware version. So once the device is added here, we should rather still make sure the device is also added under your NAS list. As you can see, we've added it here as the details. Once that's done, we can move on to the actual hotspot. In general, you can start by going to the hotspot settings and running through these as default. Okay. Sorry, just bear with me for a moment. There we go. So these would be your default settings for hotspots as you create them. You can see there's multiple things here that you can select on and off. Some are necessary, some you would like to have, some you don't find relevant. You can put them on and off as you please. Hotspot hits, track usage statistics, RRD graph files, prepaid RRD. This would be tracking data usage per voucher and on prepaid. You also have a default hotspot location that you can select. We have not selected one in this scenario. You can also give it a title. And again, you have settings and custom things. A lot of this can be set up from the beginning if it makes it easier, depending on how many hotspots you have. But then again, you will see you can also customize these settings per location, which we will get to sooner just now in the video. Hotspot voucher sale, show all hotspot vouchers. Again, do remember these are all default settings, so when you have selected them, be aware that this will appear on all of the locations you make. Here are prepaid services. Here you can put an intro message for prepaid users that can read. You can put in anything here, and then again you've got more settings that will give and take away features depending on how you set up hotspots at your company. Deleting after how many days, for example, delete unused prepaid, sorting. A lot of these settings will apply to some people and others not. Here we've got free trials, which also are on a default setting for everything. Here you can say that free trial users must register, When you do that, you can select features here for data packages, what they should do. We'll get to that in a moment. Free trial button, the text of it, T's and C's if you would like. You can enter a link to the URL. And then also the daily limit that would be free, 50 meg, a gig. Very seldomly I would see that in use. You can then also give a time limit on this. As you can see, setting it as that will have no time limit, meaning that the client would rather use all of the data before it expires instead of the time period there. Again, more text that you can add in that sense. Also, again, the T's and C's you can apply. More hotspot defaults, support contact info you can add, a Twitter account for your company if you have, a hotspot location name, voucher by location, different vendors. Here you can add a photo, a picture of your company, a picture of whatever you would like on that hotspot specifically, a coffee shop, a hotel, anything in that manner. For desktops and tablet as mobile phones, you can see they can add it. They also do specify the requirements and such, sponsor logo, partner logo, hotspot portal button. All of this can be modified for the hotspots. You also have hotspot voucher defaults. This would be when you get to generating vouchers. As you can see, the default number length, which would be 10 here. The PIN would be 4, the number of concurrent sections per voucher usage, and expiry on the voucher, and then also the duration of the voucher with a logo. Do remember, all of the settings here that we've gone through now are set as defaults, and they will apply to all of hotspots in the future. Now that we have the hotspots defaults set up more or less, you will need to go to radius services, and you will need to create a radius service which will be used for your hotspot. I've pre-configured 2 here, just so you can see. Let's go ahead and edit one quickly. As you can see, a service code can be added here. I've just named it in a way that makes sense to me. Please understand, it's best to name these that it's easier to track when it comes to troubleshooting or finding information, gathering any sorts. Service title, I've just said school. Here you would put your data limit. 10 gig would be the limit for this radius service, and it's set as once off. I'll get to that in a moment when we configure a new radius service. You can add limits here from time and every day or only certain days and such. And then obviously the speed on that being 5 meg up and 5 meg down. The reason I said we'll get to this part now is because this button will get locked once you save it. Once off being on a voucher side, daily being on a voucher side, and monthly being more to do with the actual radius. Take note, you can set the radius service on monthly, and this can be used for clients with radius services and radius packages to connect through your hotspot. Now we will move back to hotspots, and we'll go to the hotspot actual package. The reason I've gone from there to here is to show you the relation between the radius service and the hotspot package. I will edit one that I've pre-configured. As you can see, again, you can put in a code and a title. I've just named it this and this, as it is for me easiest to find. You could also add labels to your pleasing, for example, being wedding venue or school or however, just to keep track of what's going on. Over here you will select the radius service you've made. As you saw previously, I made 2, being school the one and mall the other. This would be what you select to determine that specific package, speed and usage. Over here you can see you can add the price of this package, and you can also set this expiry after how many months. As you can see, set to 0 for no expiry. Again, you have options here. These options will be default for this specific package unless changed otherwise. Show on hotspot landing page, show on prepaid purchase page, and then you have your Sage 1 ID. Also like to move into the walled gardens now. Here you will add walled garden entries. These are necessary from your IT site to be added. Once you have added them, you will simply go to filters and they will pull in. We will see that again in a different location as well. Let us move to hotspot locations. This is the important part. As you can see, we have one here that we've pre-configured once again. I will simply go and edit this so we can have a look how it is, and then I'll go through the steps of it. Your hotspot ID is going to be highly important when keeping track of your hotspots, depending on how many you have. As we've just named this training, you can then name it however you would please, but remember, as you go through a lot of statistic settings, you will be using this to find information about your hotspot. You have a hotspot mode as well, which would be normal as that, and authentication at capped users. Depending on how you set it up, you will select that. You can also select a custom template, which are no matches at the moment. I will show you in a few minutes where to do that part. You can display the location name. Remember, any settings you have set in default will already pull through when you add a location. So we'll just keep that as is at the moment. Location name being training. You can give it a short name depending if this name is too long. And then the hotspot router. This is important that you make sure the hotspot location you are creating is on the correct router you select. You can display support text here again for your support team or an email and such. Twitter information can be added here for your company. Display purchase location can also be enabled. Voucher purchase locations is online. Locations of vouchers can be purchased. Here you can specify where the client would be able to purchase that voucher. Sorry. Online voucher sales, also again, depending on settings, this will be on or off from the beginning. Although you are able to change these regardless of what you have enabled at default. Here you can say show all hotspot vouchers, all the vouchers you have created, we'll get to that in a few minutes, and show different data vendor details. Here you can show different things, desktop tablets, once again images can be added here, and the text for that specific thing. Free trials, this is all for number 4 location at the moment. Once again, defaults will pull in here. Here you can say register, we have gone through this before, but as I say again, you can modify this per hotspot in any sense that you would like. Prepaid also being here, sponsor details also being here, partner details, Wi-Fi portal, and then the hotspot banner and logo. This settings that you would enable here will only apply to this location. When you go to add location, you will see a lot of the things are already ticked on and off. As I said, this is regarding defaults that have been enabled in the setup. Now for templates, we have templates here. I won't be discussing too much on the templates as that it becomes an internal decision from the company to work on the templates. We do have 2 templates available in the folder. As you can see, these can be modified and used by your company. Let us now move on to voucher batches and vouchers. As you can see, we've got a few here that's been done already, but I'll show you the whole process through this. So here you can go add batch. You can give it a batch description. Again, best to name these appropriately so you can keep track of them. You can select these per customer if you would like. This is not necessary. And then the voucher type. As you can see, what I said previously about naming, I know what this radius is. 5 meg up, 5 meg down, it belongs to the school. Just to show that naming them in the end does pay off when keeping track of what goes where. Prepaid test hospital also there, because these are also vouchers that we've created previously. You also have a valid until date, which can be modified as you please for vouchers you generate. Active duration can be set in different values for the voucher to be active. Here you can set how many vouchers you would like to generate. So I'll set this at 10 for a moment. So this will generate 10 vouchers. I'm leaving concurrent sessions as 8. There's no need to change this. Obviously concurrent being how many on the same voucher. That is a minimal. Voucher presets is not needed, but you can do it. I will show you by just putting a test in there what would come from that. Let me just do this and this. Length and pin I will leave as it is not necessary to changes, and I will just go add batch. And there you can see the batch has been added. Voucher batches, there's the one we've just added with the price, because I've given a price to this in the previous steps we've gone through on the packages. Now I can go and I can generate the batch. As you saw there for split, it generates 10 batches as I've only allowed it to generate 10. It shows you how many are available. And now when you go to vouchers, you will see here is where did they go now? There they are, sorry. There are the vouchers at the moment that we've just created. I'm just waiting for the screen to load incorrectly again. There we go. As you can see, here are a total of 10 5 meg up, 5 meg down vouchers. They will carry on to the next page. And as you can see, they're all unused. Here is your voucher number and your PIN. If you remember, I put in that pretext as test, and there it shows the test and then the voucher number. You can do this as well to keep track of which voucher goes where in such manner and all of that, and the PIN. Expiry will also be set. It will give you information such as last use, usage to date. As none of these have been used, none of this information will be generated yet. Basically, that is it for the hotspots, creation and the packages and all that. There are a lot of added features. Here you can go to purchases, for example, purchase summary. Do understand, as this is a testing environment, not a lot of information will be on this due to it being testing. But here we'll be able to go to all gateways, multiple gateways if you have them. You can select which hotspot, if depending on how many you have, and the transactions. Also here it'll give you a summary. It'll show the location, last use, and the total value. Also you have summary report, hotspot sessions, usage graphs, free trial users, and much more. Once again, information will not be here as this is a testing site, but just to show you the amount of information you can gather from hotspots being used is quite interesting. Here you can have hotspot sessions. You can look by today, for example, yesterday, and so forth. You can also split by zone, as you can see, test hotspot office and training, depending on what information you are looking for in that scenario, for example. Just waiting for this one to load. Under hotspot usage graphs, here we actually have a little bit of usage, as I have tested on the system before. And as you can see here, you can select by voucher, radius, and all sessions, depending on how you set this. Here you can see how it comes in. Very nicely displayed for you, as you can see there, 0.5 gig, 2 hotspot sessions over there, 1 hotspot session over there, 3 hotspot sessions. And this is then per the times you would set it, as you can see. Trial accounts will also be here that you can view. Hotspot registered, the MAC, date registered, this month, usage, hotspot free trial of the data client. Below the vouchers, there's a lot of information you can gather, but it is very dependent on how long the hotspots have been active. Understand, as a testing site, there isn't a lot of information at the moment, but that is basically the ins and outs of the hotspot setup. Thank you, Gabriel, for helping us with the Microtech side of everything. Oh, sorry, one more thing, yes. Okay, I said to you guys I will show you, and I forgot to. Once you have made your hotspot location, this is very important to remember. As you have done this, you need to go and upload it to your hotspot router. That is why I made it prominent that it's important to select the correct router, and then once you click on that little yellow button over there, and you go update, it'll run through this process. And there you can see it's updating the hotspot files, copied to the folder data till training. It's pulling over the walled gardens. As I said, these need to be created from your side depending on what you use, and the IP bindings if you have entered them. IP bindings can be entered here, but we won't touch too much on that as it is a complicated matter that isn't always necessary. Well, there we go. There's your hotspots.